West. And I'm Jeremy, or Dr. J. This is Good Parents, Good Children, because without you, your kids really would follow their friends off a bridge.
All right, let's talk about this obedience thing, because the word is not only kind of out of favor. It's I'll put it this way. I interact with a local Christian homeschooling group, and the parents in the local Christian homeschooling group are afraid of using the word obedience because it's taken on this context of like compliance with governmental authority, and we've had such a liberal past politically that we've been robbed of this idea of right-sided hierarchies inside the home. So put it this way. The gentle, peaceful, we say positive second, the gentle, positive, peacefuls, what they get right is that throwing a tantrum is actually normal. Throwing a tantrum, right? This is what you taught me. And what else is normal is parents putting a stop to them.
Yes.
One tantrum.
Amen.
So here's the thing.
Like they get one, right? Your kids get one, maybe 2 or 3 over the course of time, maybe. But like, you know, they throw that first one or whatever, and then you intervene, you let them see the expectations. There might be some punishment involved. There probably is, so that they know you mean business, and you put a stop to it. And then you're putting a stop to the self-injury, right? You're putting a stop to the self-harm that they're engaging in, because tantrums are incredibly unpleasant. So yeah, they get one. That's normal. But this thing where kids have, dozens and dozens of tantrums from the ages of 2 to 5, 2 to 7, no, it's unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. This is unnecessary suffering that you're letting the kid engage in.
I say, not only do we need obedience generally, we need obedience especially during tantrums, because it's harder to obey. So it shows moral courage, and it's an overcoming. So you've obeyed in a high stakes situation.
It's difficult. Yeah.
And this is your
practice. It took practice to know how to obey when it was difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a safety context, because when fevers run high, there can be that impulse to flail. And so this is just like you're saying. Do I need a kid to obey? Well, if they're headed to the street,
you mean when feelings are running high?
I said I said fevers, but I meant like emotions.
All of those things. When they're running hot or high, either
running
one.
Hot. Yes. There it is.
When feelings are running hot, or fevers, I guess, are running high, obey for safety. Yes, I'm with you.
For safety, like not running in the street, like not, throwing stuff into the fire. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You need to be able to tell your 3 or 4-year-old to come here, put that down, stop that. And be able to expect them to obey and not go off the rails for safety reasons. Yeah, absolutely.
So Ronnie, let's shift, if it's all right. Let's do just some more of what are some good parenting approaches to tantrums. And I wanted to see if you would tell me about when to punish and how.
So I think, so with punishment, it's nice if the kid, so kids don't have to know what the exact rules are, right? Okay. You can punish when they haven't broken an exact rule, and you can punish without having just given an explicit warning. I've seen parents who think they have to warn first. That just means the kids are allowed to disobey, and then you warn, and then they're allowed, and then, right? No. Like, kids can get a sense of the kinds of things that are expected of them if you're consistent, right? But in general, if you want to have clear, sort of clear expectations in general of the kinds of things that are okay, like not destroying stuff, not making big unnecessary messes, except during the appointed time, right? Like playing in the mud and messy art, that's all good stuff. But you don't make, unnecessary messes in unpredictable ways. At times you're not allowed to. There's just this sort of idea of this kind of thing, right? So, so punishing in those situations is good, but honestly, one of the best times to punish is you tell a child to do a thing or to not do a thing and then they keep doing the thing you told them not to do, or they stop doing, they won't do the thing you asked them to do. So it's like clear, defiant, not doing what they need to do, not following directives. That is a very, very decent time to punish. Also lying. I think honesty is incredibly important you want to nip lying in the bud when they're little. And I guess it might come back again when they're teens, but I think if you do it right, you can get it so that they're out of the habit and they value honesty early. And if it crops back up in the teen years, it won't be as bad.
Sure. And if you've helped them develop virtue properly, it's going to cut their conscience when you're doing it. So you've built in the intrinsic motivation for.
And we can get into like the teen stuff and all that later as well. I mean, you want to have a certain kind of relationship with them, and we're preparing for all those things. Anyway, so I think that those are good times to punish. Clear directives they're not obeying, that kind of thing.
Speaking of clear directives, that was kind of another thing we wanted to hit. We've been saying this whole time about stand up. You also gave me some advice of using quieter now, which I love. Every time we can, we want to give directives in the or we're going to give instructions in the positive direction. Right. So the version you don't want to do is quit tantruming. The version you do want to do.
Not only is it like you're not telling the thing to do, so it's just negative. You're not giving the replacement behavior, but it's like super abstract too, and not measurable. They don't know what it means. They don't know if they're being successful. That's like the worst goal a boss could give you, like unmeasurable and abstract.
And see, and calm down is in the positive direction, but it's abstract too.
It's better than stop tantruming.
But that's why it is. But that's why we want stand up, be still, or because I've got
that's what I mean by the clear directives. Yes.
Yeah. One of my girls, her emotions go high pretty frequently, and if I'm giving her a directive, it's remember to breathe. Oh yeah, and she's got like.
She knows the program.
She does starfish breathing. She knows the program. So see,
yeah. We used to do sniff the flowers and blow the bubbles, like that kind of deal. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
And this is the trick. You've mentioned this before, that if you give the directive and the tantrum is resolved, the emotions come down, then you get to avoid doing punishment. Great. You didn't want to do it in the first place, and you've kept your punishment you're going to use later more efficient because it doesn't get overused.
Okay, there was something that you made me think of a few minutes ago, and I lost it and I just got it back. So this is back to the thing about the gentle, positive, peacefuls. They don't like obedience, right? They think obedience is like a bad word, and they'll say, do you just want kids to comply to authority? They don't like the word authority either. And I think about all that, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, I get it. If there's an evil authority that is trying to make demands on you, knowing when to say no is really valuable. Totally agree, completely agree with that goal. But here's the other thing. I think obedience with your parents is about teaching your child to not follow through on their hedonistic and emotional impulses. So your kid is going to obey something. Are they going to obey their naturally weak, hedonistic voice that just says to do the impulsive things? Or are they going to learn how to obey the like sort of the patterns that you give them, the programs you give them, right? Like if you have expectations of them using certain kinds of respectful scripts, like, so for example, there's things I go over with my kids, like when I ask you to do something, you say, yes, sir. When my wife does, they say, yes, ma'am. If they have a good reason to not do it, they say, yes, sir, please reconsider. And then I'll often let them reconsider if they use that sparingly and well. And if they don't, then they lose the privilege of being able to say, yes, sir, please reconsider. And they hate that. And they just have to say, yes, sir, but they can earn it back. Like I want them to be able to use their own judgment and whatnot. It's not about some kind of mindless script of obedience. They follow this script and it keeps things clear for them. But the reason is not to help them obey a tyrannical government. It's so that they won't obey their own internal tyranny of weakness and hedonism, which we all have. Like we want to not go to the gym and exercise. We want to eat the bad foods, which I super duper struggle with that particular hedonistic thing of just eating whatever I want, whenever I want. That's so brutal. But anyway, we tend to follow those scripts of thoughtless hedonism and weakness and just following this path, teaching them to obey a voice outside of themselves that's more mature, and then teaching them to have a voice inside of themselves that's more mature. And then you transition the authority over time and the responsibility from your external voice of maturity and virtue and responsibility to their own internal voice that you have been helping them with. So they rebel against the hedonism and the weakness inside themselves. They pursue something better. And then that also will hopefully give them the wisdom to know when to set boundaries and say no to evil people in authority. Because there's a time to tell your boss, no, I'm not going to do the thing you want me to do. I'm not just going to nod and lie. Right? We're very into honesty for really good reasons. And we're, we need to have our kids tell the truth to themselves, tell the truth to others. We're going to tell the truth to our kids as best we can, as best we know. And this whole compliance thing, compliance to an evil tyranny involves lying. You lie to them, you lie to yourself. So anyway, this whole, it's just such a false, foolish argument, this thing about anti-obedience and, oh, you just want them to comply to your authority. Nonsense. I want to save them from a immature program that involves a lack of virtue and wasting your life and your time, which is meaningless and unpleasant.
Well, and Ronnie,
it's a little rant for you. I got a little rant.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but that was pretty ranty.
I rant from time. I think it was a good rant. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of the rant. I think it was a fine rant. But
I think it was a fine rant. And one of the things that you were bringing out, I think, is the environment where the punishment or where the tantrum management takes place. And usually it's home, because usually the parental training, the virtue development is happening at home. And again, we want it to happen early and often. So a lot of our parenting advice isn't aimed at these sort of rescue behaviors like the 4-year-old that I knew, kind of what you need to do if tantrums are happening at 6 or 7, but are instead kind of these upfront things. And so when the tantrum happens at home, we want to train it away there. We even in our pre-gaming, we're talking about, well, would you do something different, like in a public setting or in a private setting,
the grocery store,
and listen, maybe, I mean, even even my kid when he was 3 did a tantrum at a department store. It really happened. And
there are still department stores. I didn't know those existed anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like a Walmart, I guess. I mean, whatever. And what I did, and I'm not telling you to do this, but I physically picked him up and took him all the way to the car, because that's where I was going to deal with it. The last thing that you want to do in public is give your kid an audience. If you're getting tantrums, because if you're getting tantrums, you want to know, why is the kid tantruming? Sometimes it's attention. That's true. Oftentimes they want something quite specific, right? And you can usually reason that out in your home. But if
because you just said no, right? Like that's the classic angry outburst. I've sort of been involved in like assessments and whatnot, and that was the thing. It's like if there's a discussion of an angry outburst or a tantrum, it's like, oh, what did the parent or teacher or authority figure say no about?
What are
like it's always they said no. Yeah, they took something away. They said no. They set a boundary. The kid didn't like the boundary, right? You said you have to go to school. The kid doesn't want to go to school. You said you can't have the sugary cereal. The kid wants the sugary cereal.
And it can ramp as if the kids. It can ramp as if the kid's holding you ransom. Because what happened, and again, this really did happen with me and my now 8-year-old, who doesn't do this mess anymore. But when he was 3, and he wasn't allowed to have a checkout counter candy, definitely did throw himself to the floor and bang, and it definitely did turn a head, right? Which is what he was aiming for, in hopes that he could start a conflict and win it. And I don't know if I had good forethought or training myself, but my idea was, I'm taking this to ground where I win. Right.
Right. You change. That's not a bad strategy. You change the you change the stakes there, sort of. You change the fighting environment or whatever.
And that
the
actually
arena
matches the arena.
home turf. That's what I'm thinking
our,
of. You took it home field advantage. That's what
home field advantage. Our motto: you can parent, you may parent. This is you may parent, because the new gentle positive and even kind of liberal leftist perspective is that your kids aren't your kids. I've even heard sound bites that,
right.
And we're teaching people that they're not your children. They're the community's children. And it's just this point that I dictate my parenting strategy, same as we advocate good parents, that you dictate your own parenting strategy, right? Listening to the wisdom and input of other good parents. But that's why if I'm going to deal with my kid's tantrum, however I'm going to, like, I'm going to do it without input of the mob.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the kids are not the communities, and they are the parents, and just absolutely positively, not the countries, not the governments, not the schools, not the communities. They're my kids. You know what? They'll be with me forever. Right? I mean, not like with me. Hopefully they'll launch and they'll be virtuous and competent, and that will be good. But I have an investment in them forever, and the community and the government doesn't. They just don't. Like, they're my responsibility. I love them and care about them. And I know them better than anybody else, and I love them more than anybody else. This whole "it takes a village" thing, it's true that you need assistance, right? Your parent dies, neighbors and friends and family in church bring food, right? Or they babysit your child. We babysat somebody, a neighbor kid, because his grandfather died and they needed help, right? That is the village helping out. It's not my kid, right? I'm not raising the kid. It doesn't take a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to help assist a parent. They're the ones raising the kid, not the village at all. No. And man, that is off. It's also funny that I feel like that philosophy is coming from the same people that say things like, "Oh, you just want them to comply to authority." You're like, you use this same kind of rhetoric of "it takes a village," or "it's not your child, it's community's child, it's the government's child, it's our society's child." How do those two ideas go together? Like, those are not compatible ideas at all. But okay, so bring us back on. So we'll bring it back to back on the rails, right? Of tantrums in public versus tantrums in private, tantrums at home versus tantrums in the grocery store. Like, how do we deal with that? And I think that's a really good point, because we hadn't really hit it hard before. And I think super duper clear expectations all the time. And hopefully kids are pretty good at following through on expectations, like they have habits of it. That's how you're able to take kids to the grocery store and the restaurant, right? Parents should know what's going to tempt their kids. If they know the sugar aisle, the candy aisle, the checkout stand is going to lead to the kid asking for a thing that you're going to say no to, say no before you go into the store. Be like, "I am going to not give you this. But if you behave yourself the entire time we're in the store, then you get a sticker. And if you get 5 stickers, you get a whatever, right? Like, that's the reward. You've already got that in place, however you do that. Right? So there's clear expectations. You tell them no in advance. That is a super helpful strategy. They don't, it's almost like you're saying, "I'm not telling you no now, but I'm warning you, the no's coming," right? Like, this is the theatrical trailer to the no movie that is about to play in just a few minutes. Okay. So just get ready. And the kids can, like, emotionally prepare for that. And that helps lead them up to success. So in a way, that's all about preparing, right? The clear expectations, telling them no in advance. And then if you forgot to do that or whatever, and you're in public, then quietly whisper to them what you expect. If they are in the habit of following through with your directives, which hopefully they should be, although they may not when they're hungry and tired and feverish, when things are going really, really poorly, they're not going to behave quite as well. But in general, if they have a habit of behaving well, you whisper clear instructions, they can respond.
And then if you get, but why? Why couldn't I have the toy? What do you do?
Okay, so this is great. And this strategy has worked for Heather and I, my wife, for a really, really long time. I love to tell my kids why we do everything we do as parents after they have been completely obedient. Because here's the thing, most of the time, kids don't give a poop about why. It's a negotiation trick, right? It's just like a little widget they can try to negotiate with. They're like, why? And by saying why, by asking why, what they really mean is your reasons are stupid. And I want you to rethink that, right? If they obey first, if they were really curious, they'd obey first, and then they would still be curious. The obedience wouldn't kill the curiosity. But if it's negotiation, then after they obey, oh, look, the question's gone. They just want to go play with their friends. They want to go do whatever they were going to do anyway, right? Like the curiosity is dead. So
yeah, it's
ask all the questions you want after you have followed the respectful script. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, whatever. And you've been obedient. You've done what you need to do. So, I mean, wait 5 minutes or an hour and I'll explain whatever you want. I'll answer all the questions I'll answer every question that you ask to the best of my ability.
So it all starts, well, I mean, it probably all starts with an emotional ramp up and then a, defiant attitude, but it also starts with, oh, your reasons are wrong. This is this idea that tantrums come from that combination of emotions, but also the dishonest talk. In CBT, or when we're busy being psychologists and counselors, sometimes we call these irrational thoughts,
right?
And it's things that we all have, but kids have, like it's not fair, or she always gets to and I never get to,
right?
And actually, so some of the why is implied in there is you owe me why. Like you must tell me
right
what's going on here. And
which is a lie, right?
It is a lie.
A second ago, it's lying, dishonest, irrational thoughts
to self.
Yeah. And that ramps up the negative emotions, right? And the kids will like stir themselves up into a negative emotional uproar. And the negative thinking with the why, with the lies, keeps that emotional because it takes a lot of emotional energy to throw a tantrum, right? You've got to like fuel that fire. Well, how do you fuel the fire? With lies. You owe me that candy. You owe me this thing, right? Like that kind of a deal. And
so if you can take away the fuel, then the fire will burn out. Or if you can change your words, you can change the fire. And that's what we're going to get into in our next video.
Yeah, it's thoughts lead to emotions, and emotions lead to tantrums, or you can have thoughts that lead to emotions and lead to good things. Like this is the kind of thing, which is related to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So you should definitely check that video out. Hey, you just watched our last video in our series on tantruming. We are planning to follow this up with a video about the relationship between thoughts and emotions. So check that out.
And if you liked it, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, leave a comment. Either way, subscribe. We got lots more videos. See you soon, good parents.